The rain was not just falling that night. It was chasing everything on the road, washing the world into shades of silver and sorrow. When a tired single-dad truck driver saw a lone girl walking through the storm with her head bowed and her clothes clinging to her like regret, and in that single heartbeat between the wipers' swipes, a choice formed that would quietly reshape two broken lives forever. Before the story pulls you deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of one good decision, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Ripple of Kindness. Because stories like this live on only when people who still believe keep them alive. He had been driving since before dawn, the kind of long haul that left his shoulders tight and his thoughts heavier than the cargo behind him. Life had narrowed for him over the past few years into a simple, exhausting routine: drive, deliver, return, repeat. Ever since his wife passed away, the road had become both his refuge and his prison. It paid the bills, kept food on the table, and allowed him to raise his young son alone, but it also kept him far from home, far from rest, and far from healing. Nights like this one, soaked in rain and silence, were when the memories crept in the hardest. He told himself to focus on the road, to keep moving forward, because stopping, emotionally or physically, had always felt dangerous. That was when he noticed her. At first, she looked like a shadow on the shoulder of the highway, barely visible under the streetlights. As he drew closer, the image sharpened into a young girl, soaked through, arms wrapped around herself, shoes heavy with water, hair plastered to her face. She walked with no umbrella, no phone in hand, and no sign of where she was going. Cars passed her without slowing, splashing water and indifference alike. Something in the way she moved, slow, exhausted, yet determined, pressed against his chest in a way he couldn't explain. It reminded him of the nights he had walked hospital corridors alone, clutching fear and hope at the same time. He drove past her at first. Old instincts told him to keep going, to mind his business, to protect himself and his child by avoiding trouble. The world was not kind, and he had learned that lesson the hard way. But the image of her in the rain refused to leave him. It followed him in the side mirror, then in his thoughts, growing heavier with every mile. He imagined his own son years from now, vulnerable, unseen, hoping someone would care enough to stop. The truck slowed almost without his permission, tires hissing on the wet asphalt as he pulled over. The girl froze when she noticed the truck. Fear flickered across her face, the kind born from disappointment and betrayal rather than ignorance. She didn't run, but she didn't approach either. He stayed inside the truck at first, giving her space, his posture careful and calm. The rain filled the silence between them. Eventually, she took a step closer, then another, as if each movement required courage she wasn't sure she still had. She looked younger up close, her face pale, eyes hollowed by something far deeper than the cold. She had no dramatic story at first, no rush of words, just fragments: a broken home, a stepfather who made staying unbearable, a mother who couldn't or wouldn't see. She had left with nothing but the clothes she wore, convinced that anywhere was safer than where she'd been. The rain had caught her miles from her last safe thought, and now she had nowhere to go. He listened without interrupting, the way he had learned to listen to his son when words came slowly and painfully. He recognized the look in her eyes, the look of someone who had learned too early that the world doesn't always protect the weak. Taking her to the nearest town was the logical thing to do. Dropping her at a shelter would have been responsible. Calling someone else to handle it would have been easy. But logic didn't quiet the ache in his chest. He thought about the empty passenger seat, about the lunchbox he packed for his son every morning, about the promise he had once made to be the kind of man his child could be proud of. So he did more than the minimum. He drove her to a small diner first, bought her a hot meal, watched color slowly return to her face as warmth reached places the rain had stolen from. Then he contacted the right people: social services, counselors, those trained to help. But he stayed until they arrived, making sure she wasn't alone again too quickly. The days that followed surprised him. He couldn't forget her, and she didn't forget him either. With the help of professionals, her situation unfolded carefully, painfully but safely. She was placed with relatives who were willing to protect her, and therapy began the slow work of repair. Through it all, she asked about him, about his son, about how someone so tired still chose to care. He didn't have a grand answer. He only knew that stopping that night had reminded him he was more than his grief. For his son, something changed too. The father who came home from the road now carried a quieter strength. He talked more. He smiled without forcing it. He explained that kindness wasn't about being fearless, but about choosing to act even when fear whispered excuses. The boy listened, absorbing the lesson not as a speech, but as a truth lived out. Months later, a letter arrived. It wasn't long or poetic, but it was honest. The girl wrote about school, about sleeping without fear, about learning that not all strangers pass you by. She thanked him for stopping, for seeing her, for proving that one moment of courage could reroute a life headed for darkness. He folded the letter carefully and kept it in the truck, a reminder that the road didn't just take from him, it had given something back. As this story moves toward its end, if it has touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it, and stay with this channel. Your support helps spread stories that remind us humanity still matters. And before we close, please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, or share a moment when one small act of kindness changed your life. The rain still falls on highways every night, and people still walk unseen through storms of their own. But somewhere out there, a single dad truck driver knows that one decision, made in the dark, can become a light that travels farther than any road ever could.